Okay, well, we are in part three of a series called Holding Anxiety Together. And this is a title that I think Stan came up with, right? Stan, was it you? Nope? Okay. Well, Lori told me, she's like, I was thinking about calling anxiety, but I talked to Stan, and he's like, you gotta hold anxiety together. And she's like, this is the perfect title. So you might not know it, but she said that it was you. Okay, let me share with you a story of a memory that I have when I had a very anxious night. It was 2006, and I was living in Northern California at the time, and we did this thing called a midwinter. We had a retreat, and we haven't had one up there in a long time. And I said, hey, let's do one. And I partnered with another church, and we put a whole retreat together, and we had a great experience. And so I told the conference office, and I said, hey, we had this amazing youth retreat. At that time, the Southern California churches didn't have a winter retreat. So they said, hey, let's start one down here too. And they've been having it since. And they said, since Kotz, you're the one that knows how it's supposed to work, why don't you come down and speak? And I'm like, oh, speak at a retreat. I don't get to do that often. Back then, I didn't really speak that much. So they said, Kotz, why don't you come down and prepare 4 sermons and it could speak to a room of 200 youth. And I said, yes. So I flew down, and it was Friday night, and 2 sermons on Saturday and 1 on Sunday morning. That was the whole thing. So I prepared 4 messages. Friday night, I spoke. Now, backstory. The person who was in charge of the SoCal Midwinter was this lady that I worked with. And I worked with her in the past where we would put out events, and afterwards we would debrief. And in this debrief, she would often say things like, that speaker was so bad, like he should never speak again, like that kind of stuff, right? So as I was speaking to the youth, and my job was to speak to the teenagers in the room, like 200 of them, but for some reason in the corner of my mind, the only person that mattered was her standing in the back, having her arms crossed and just looking at me like this, like who does that, right? People usually are like listening in like this. So I'm like, I should be focusing on the crowd, right? And what the Spirit's trying to do through me. But instead, I'm like paying attention to her in the corner of my eye. I would tell a joke every once in a while, and the kids would be, oh, that's funny. You're the best, Pastor, But she would be like, the whole time. And then I would, do the closing part of the sermon, and then I would say, let's pray. And then the kids are in tears because like I'm on fire, right? And then I look over there, and she's still doing this. So that night, if you're a speaker, you get your own cabin so that you don't have any distractions. I'm in my cabin, and it's like 9, 10 p.m., and I'm like, I got to rewrite my entire, like the last 3 sermons, I got to rewrite it because clearly she's not happy with it. Like my whole sermon was being rewritten because of one person in the room, because I was afraid of what she was thinking of me. So I get on my laptop, I start working on it, and I work. It's about midnight now, and I'm still working, and I'm like, no, delete. She's not gonna like this one. Let's do this. Like, oh, I know her story. Maybe if I put this in here, she'll feel it like in her heart. 2 a.m., I'm like, that point when you're so stressed out that you just stop caring? I got to a point where I'm like, I just want to just throw in the towel. I don't want to do this anymore because why? And I know what's happening to me. I'm like, why is she controlling my weekend? Like, why does she have so much power over me? And so I'm having this anxiety attack. And then after a while, I'm like, I don't know which one. Like, I have my old sermon, I have my new one. My new one isn't well researched, but the old one, I put more thought and prayer into it. I don't know why, like, this one person has so much power over me. And so I look at both, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take both notes up in the morning. I'm going to take it up, put it on the podium, and I'm going to look at both, and I'm going to start with one, and I glance over. If she's not having a good time, I'll switch over to the other one. Like, I was going through all these scenarios. And now it's like 4 a.m. and I'm like, I need to get some rest. I go to sleep, and then I can't fall asleep because now I'm doing math. I'm sure most of you guys understand what I'm talking about. You're like, breakfast is at 7 o'clock, right? And you don't want to just get out of bed and go because you look crazy. So like, I need to wake up at 6:30, maybe 6:45. Okay, I could do it in 15 minutes. Yeah, you do this like thing, right? And so that means I get 2 hours of sleep, maybe 2 hours and 30. Wait a minute, I don't have to get breakfast. So maybe I could get another 30 minutes of rest because session starts at 8. Oh no, session starts at 9. So I could get another hour of rest. So you're doing this math, like if I could just skip this and don't eat, and if I do this, then I could get more sleep. Have you guys ever done that? It's this backwards math, right? You're like, okay, well, what is the latest I could sleep? But that math keeps you up. So now it's 5 a.m., and you realize, wait a minute, if I sleep now and I wake up then, and now it's like 6 a.m., like, okay, well, if I fall asleep now, and then eventually you come to this point when you realize, you know that feeling when the way you're feeling right now might be better than you only getting 2 hours of sleep? Like you wake up in the morning, you feel more tired than you did when you went to bed, right? So I'm like, maybe I could just stay up the whole time. Because now I have this anxiety of, what if I sleep through it? And they're like, the worship team comes up, they play, and now the speaker, and they're like, where's Kotz? Oh, he's still sleeping, right? It's so embarrassing. So I'm like, okay, I'm just not going to sleep. And I didn't sleep. Oh, yeah, you guys know. Okay. And so I go up there and I'm about to preach. I'm delirious. You know that moment when you're so tired that everything's funny? So I'm like, Jesus loves you. And I'm just laughing for no reason. And so that is the night that anxiety got the worst of me. It just shut me down. And after I gave that message, I went to my cabin. I just slept until like dinner time. And now my clock was totally messed up. I couldn't sleep the night after. And I felt bad because the kids there, they wanted to have this experience, and my anxiety affected almost everybody's experience there. Now, from what I heard, the kids had a good time, and they had their moment with their cabin and all that kind of stuff. But I wish I was better, right? So anxiety. I'm sure a lot of us have that kind of story where you worry about so many things that haven't happened yet, things that you predict is going to happen in the future. And you're like, why is this getting the best of me? Why is it affecting me so much? So I want to start off by saying this. Anxiety is the byproduct, and is a byproduct, I'll talk about why it's a byproduct, of our ability to remember the past and the patterns of what happened in the past and predict the future. So in the past, I remember this lady, and she was like judging other people. That was my past. I've seen her judge other people and shut people down and even make remarks about how that person should not be preaching anymore. And I'm like, I don't want that to be me. And so now I'm predicting my next message is the one when she's going to do that to me, right? And the reason why it's a byproduct is because a lot of times our ability to look at the past and predict the future is not a bad thing. For example, have you ever wished for something? That is the product of looking at the past and predicting the future. Have you ever had hope? When bad things happen, you're like, no, things are going to be fine. How could you say that? It's because you looked at your past, and now you're making predictions based on your past, right? Have you ever dreamed? When I grow up, I want to be this. And sometimes your dreams become more realistic as you look deeper, like one day I want to be a doctor. But then your past, you realize, but I can't stand blood. So maybe I should be an engineer, right? Like you dream based on the patterns you see in your past. Anticipation. If you play sports and you're like, okay, somebody came up to bat, I got to get ready because this person tends to hit in this area, right? That's a prediction. It's an anticipation because you're looking at the past data and then you're predicting what's going to happen in the future. Have you made plans? Summer plans, future plans, plans for your family? That is also something you get to do because you look at your past and look at your future. If you could even imagine something, that is something you're able to do because you look at your past and you're predicting the future. But part of that whole package is that anxiety is also bundled into that. So for us to say, I want to get rid of anxiety from my life, you're also getting rid of the ability to wish, to dream, to anticipate, to plan, to have hope. So unfortunately, anxiety is something that we're stuck with. It's something we're stuck with. This is my definition of anxiety. Anxiety is an emotion, and it is an emotion. It's not who you are, it's something that you emote, caused by the belief of looming potential loss. Something bad is about to happen, and I need to think about it. I need to sit on it, and it becomes anxiety, right? So The question I'm going to start with today is this: what has anxiety kept from you? Now, there's good things and bad things. Like, for example, anxiety can keep you from danger. Right? Yeah. Like, I don't know if I should go out with my friends tonight because the person who's driving us doesn't seem like a safe driver. I'm going to make sure that I don't say yes to that. It could have saved your life, right? Anxiety also could keep you from heartache. Anxiety is basically your brain trying to protect your heart, right? So I'm like, I don't want to get involved in this kind of relationship because last time, looking at my past, maybe it wasn't your story, maybe it was somebody else's story. My best friend went through this and her heart was broken, so I don't want to go through that. So your anxious heart might be protecting you from that discomfort, from heartache, right? But there's also bad things there's also good things that anxiety could keep you from. For example, opportunity. You have this opportunity and your anxiety just takes over you and like, oh, I see the opportunity, but I don't want to jump on it. Or maybe there's new experiences. Maybe in hindsight, years later, you're like, man, when I was a teenager, I should have done this. But I was so afraid to take that chance. I have regret, right? Maybe it's a relationship. I'm so afraid of committing myself to somebody. And because of that, your anxiety kept you from that relationship, right? So it could keep you from good things and bad things. Or maybe in your situation, you're not an anxious person, but maybe somebody else close to you is. For example, at your workplace, if the person who works above you has anxiety, maybe that person micromanages you because this person is like, oh man, my team, I can't trust my team. I got to make sure I do everything myself. And now they're just looking over your shoulder all the time. Every time you submit something, they're like, let me look at that. And they change everything on your work because they're just anxious, right? Or maybe the person that you're close to is so anxious that it's caused you to feel isolated from that person. I can't give you my heart because last time I gave my heart to somebody, they abused me or whatever it might be. So I can't trust you with my heart. And now you're starting to feel like you're drifting apart from each other. Or maybe that person starts to become more and more unavailable to you because of their anxiety. So anxiety does rob us from good things, but also bad things, right? And so, like I said, the reality of it is that I can't stand here and tell you if you follow steps 1, 2, 3, and 4, then you're going to rid yourself of anxiety. Because the truth is, we can never rid ourselves of anxiety. Like I said earlier, if you get rid of anxiety, you're also getting rid of hope. You're also getting rid of all the other good things, like the ability to dream, the ability to anticipate certain things. Anxiety is just a part of who we are. And so you ask yourself questions, and you stay up late at night asking questions like, what if this doesn't work out? Maybe I should end it now because I know it's not going to work out. And there's that anxious heart coming out again. What if I end up alone? These are questions a lot of people ask, right? What if I don't get that job? Or better, or maybe worse, I don't know. Like, what if I'm stuck in the job I'm in right now for the rest of my life, right? Or what if I invite my friends to my birthday party and no one shows up? Maybe I should never have birthday parties again, right? Or maybe it's like a bigger scale. Like, what if this country ends up being, I don't know, right? Like, there's so many things that we could be anxious about. And you're thinking like, oh yeah, so I'm glad I came today because Kotze, you're going to take my anxiety away. No, we could never do that. I wish I could just stand here and say, if you follow Jesus, then all your anxieties are going to go away. That's just unrealistic. But we can't get rid of anxiety. However, we can hold anxiety together. We can find a way to somehow manage it. So we're going to talk about that. And everybody does it differently. Today I'm going to share with you how I go about it. And I'll tell you now, it doesn't work all the time. Okay? This is not a foolproof thing. But for me, I have seen some improvement in my anxiety because of what I'm about to share with you. Because I'm a very logical person. I think things through. I'm not that emotional when it comes to dealing with these things. For me, understanding, how does it work? Understanding anxiety, for me, is the first step of holding anxiety together. If I just understand a little bit more why we think about these things, how we think about these things, then maybe I might be able to hack it. Maybe there's a way for me to deal with it. So I want to start off by showing you a little diagram. It's not something I made. It's made by a person, he's a psychologist. His name is Carl Albrecht. I think that's how you pronounce it. He calls it the feararchy. So everybody's fears, anxieties, he distilled it down to 5 categories. 5 categories. And it's like, he starts from the bottom where it's like, this is something that almost everybody, so it's like the widest space. It's like it's what everybody deals with, and it's going to work its way up to the top where not many people deal with it, but the higher you go, the more intensified your anxiety is. Okay? So let's start with the first one. The first one is called the fear of extinction. This is the fear of death. He argues that there's this potential loss of life. This is something that we're all afraid of. So for example, if you're afraid of heights, you're not really afraid of heights. You're afraid of falling off and dying. That's why you're afraid of heights, right? So if you're, what is it called? Acrophobia? Did I say that? Okay. Yeah, that's this. This is your category down here. A lot of people, like one day, like if you're afraid of driving, it's not you're afraid of cars. You're like, oh my gosh, a car, right? No, you're like, I'm afraid that when I get in this car and drive, or maybe someone you love, like son, you're old enough to drive, and we're like, oh, I'm anxious, right? It's like, oh, don't drive. Why? Because I'm afraid that you might make a wrong turn or somebody else might run a red light and end a life. So there's the fear of extinction. Okay, this is the most common type of fear. I'm sure you guys could relate because it's the most common, right? Now, the next one, which there's less people who are anxious about this one, but it's a little heightened version of, like, it's like a little more fear, is the fear of mutilation. That means losing a part of your body or something happening to your body that's permanent. So maybe it's a health concern, right? Or for some of you, you're like, I'm never gonna get a tattoo. It's because you're afraid of something permanent that's gonna be on your body, and maybe like 30 years from now, you're like, oh man, I didn't know that my skin was gonna sag like, my happy face looks like a sad face now, right? But it's permanent. No one does happy faces in a very, okay, anyways, right? It's like, it's permanent. Or maybe it's like, from this day on, I have to have a breathing tube on for the rest of my life, and that scares you, right? It's a permanent thing. Now, from this day on, you have to do this. As a kid, you roll down the window and your parents told you, don't stick your head out there or your arm out there because somebody might take it away from you. I don't know if that could happen. This is a legitimate fear that I had growing up. Like, I have this image in my head that I put my hand up and a motorcyclist will go by and grab my hand and it'll be like a clean cut. You're like, oh, right? Keep your arms inside or you'll lose it. I think that's what my parents said to me. Oh, when I was a kid, I think it was like first grade, I went to VBS, Vacation Bible School. And the leader told me, do you want to invite Jesus into your heart? And I didn't speak English that well back then. I took it literally. And I was so afraid that a human being, like a Jesus figure, was going to go into my heart. And like, is he ever going to come out? I don't know, right? That's a fear of mutilation. So I said no that day. And now I'm a pastor. Okay. Okay. Next level of fear, less common, autonomy. I won't be able to do what I want. A fear of enslavement. I'm going to be indebted to somebody and now I can't go and live the life that I want to live. Or maybe it's a health thing, paralysis. I won't be able to move my body the way that I always wanted to move it. Or driving. I can't go anywhere. Okay, so it's interesting because autonomy says I want to get in a car and go places wherever I want to go. Extinction says I don't want to get in a car because I might die in doing so, right? But autonomy is like if you go into a tight space and you can't move and now you have this claustrophobia, that's the word. There's so many phobias we're going to talk about. The reason why you have anxiety there is because you're afraid that now you won't be able to sit up, you can't move your arms, you can't walk, and you can't breathe like the fresh air that you used to spread. Right? That's the fear of the anxiety of autonomy. Sometimes it's not just a physical thing, but when you make a commitment to a relationship, and now you're thinking, you mean I can't go out with anybody else? Like I can't go on a date with anybody else. It just has to be you, right? And now you have a fear that you can't be autonomous in your relationships. you mean that I'm now exclusive to this person. So a lot of people are afraid of relationships because of the anxiety of autonomy. All right. Or another example would be, if I were to share this with you, share my heart with you, right? Then I don't know if I'm going to be able to express myself in the way, like if I were to, like there's like a line, and now I'm on the other side of the line, because now we're in a relationship, right? When you cross that line, you realize I'm not going to be the free person that I used to be. And so you're afraid of that relationship, like making that commitment in the relationship. That's the fear of autonomy. Not as common as death, but more intensified in fear. Next level, the fear of separation, abandonment, rejection. Like earlier I said, if I were to invite people to my birthday party and nobody showed, it's going to reveal to me that I'm not, well, maybe I didn't have as many friends as I thought I did. Maybe I'm going to die alone, right? All the anxieties start to come in. Maybe I'm not wanted. Or maybe I'm not respected. In high school, actually my wife and I were talking about, because it's Valentine's weekend or whatever, we were talking about like my first girlfriend. I don't know why we do this to ourselves, but like I remember asking her out, and I'm like, I don't want to do that because we're close friends, but if I were to do that and she says no, we're like, you know, that decision you have to make, like we're good friends, and if I were to ask her out, then at that point, if she says no, we can never be good friends. We have to be awkward, right? Or if she says yes, then like it's like so weird. And I'm like, oh, to be more than friends is crossing a line where if that doesn't work out, then we're never going to be friends like that. So like, okay, so there's separation that might happen there, like all that stuff. By the way, if you don't want to confront your friends, like, you know, we need to make boundaries, you know, right? You're afraid to make that confrontation. You're afraid to have that moment of just telling them, please back off. You're afraid to have that conversation with them because if you do that, you might end up in a place where you're like, okay, so maybe I should just avoid the other person. Have you ever tried to confront somebody with something because you love them, but you didn't do it because you're afraid that it might actually cause a strain in your relationship? Fear of separation. Most people who stay in toxic relationships, they don't have the courage to get out of those relationships because they're afraid that if they leave, they'll be alone. And they would rather be in a toxic relationship than being alone. Fear of separation. And at the very top of this pyramid, not as common, but if you do have this fear, it's super, super high, it's a high level, is the fear of losing your ego, yourself. I don't know if this is like a Jerry Seinfeld thing. He says, like, studies have shown that the fear of speaking is a lot worse than the fear of death. And the punchline is that you would rather be the guy in the coffin than the person who's doing the eulogy, right? That was his punchline. But that when you speak and you're afraid, you have the anxiety of speaking, it's because when you speak and you stumble upon your words, you're afraid that you're going to be humiliated. Your ego is scarred, right? If you experience shame and you avoid certain things because you want to avoid shame, it's because of this anxiety up here. Loss of integrity of self. I don't want to do this because if I do this, how am I going to show my face to the people around me? When you feel like you don't have self-worth, right? If I don't want to do this because I'm nothing, you know, I'm not going to do this because somebody else deserves it, not me. Now, one thing I want to make a note of is just because somebody suffers from a certain type of anxiety doesn't mean that you could predict which category it fits in. For example, if you have money, if you're wealthy right now and you have a fear of losing money, it could be any of these things, right? Like ego. Like if your worth is attached to your wealth, then you don't want to lose money because you might lose like, oh, how am I going to show myself to everybody when I'm poor, right? Or maybe it might be separation. Because of your wealth, you're able to hang out with a group of people, your social circles a certain way. And if you lose money, you might feel separation from them, right? Or autonomy. I'm able to do whatever I want in life because of the money I have right now. Right, so and so forth. You can see mutilation. I don't have enough money for healthcare, and so I don't know. Like same with death. So like just because somebody is avoiding certain things doesn't mean that you could predict which one it is, because it might be a different one for everybody. Okay, so when I saw this, it was helpful for me because I was able to look at this and say, oh, what I'm anxious about, like for example, in the story I started with, it was a story of ego. What if this person that is judging me looks at me and says, oh yeah, he's not good at this, therefore he should not be a pastor, or he has the wrong calling in his life, he's investing his time in the wrong place. And I was afraid of that, right? And so it's different. You could probably see your own anxiety in here somewhere. And it was helpful to know, like, oh, it's this. That's what the problem is. Now, I spent the first, a lot of time just talking about the problem. Now let's get to the solution. Sorry, we're out of time. No solution for you guys. No, okay. Okay. Now, for those of you who are like, okay, well, you're a pastor, so I know what you're going to say. You're going to say that the solution to your anxiety is religion, right? Right? No. Okay. Religion does not hold anxiety together. It does not. As a matter of fact, it does the opposite. And the reason for this is because when you are anxious about certain things, you want to control the situation, right? Like if I could just silence that woman, then I would speak freely to the youth, right? Like if I could just, right? If she wasn't here, I'm going to make sure that her car breaks down on the way up the mountain, because then, right, if you control the situation, your anxiety goes down, right? Well, guess what? Anxiety seeks control. Next slide. But also, religion also seeks control. What do you mean by that, Kotz? Let me explain. There's another chart for you guys. Here's a circle. At the top of the chart, this is how religions are formed, by the way, so in case you know. We discover that the world we live in right now is dangerous, that there's scarcity, meaning if they take most of my crops, that's less for me, and I realize I'm going to starve. Me and my family, we're going to starve. How am I supposed to provide for my family? Or the world is chaotic. That tribe over there has a bigger sword than me, and they're going to take down my whole village, right? You realize that you live in a dangerous society. So next slide. So that leads to fear. Now I'm scared. You have anxiety. What am I going to do next? What if tomorrow a big storm comes in and uproots all my crops and we're going to be hungry? What are we going to do? How are we going to survive? So at that point, what most people do is next. We move and we find a way to control it. And you do. You control it, right? You try to control, like maybe we should put a cover over the crops, or maybe we need to train more soldiers. I mean, you got to do, right? You try to train and you try to change and you try to do everything you can to control the situation. Now, it's at this point, most humans in history realize that they don't have control over everything, right? Like, I can't control the weather, right? I can't control fertility. I can't control anything. Like, oh gosh, right? So at that point, you come to a conclusion, we're helpless. Oh, wait a minute. There is somebody who can control all this. Maybe let's tap into that resource. And what is that thing that could control all things? Well, next slide, we learn to control God. Wait, how do you control God? Well, whether we know it or not, most humans try to do this. When somebody's sick, what do? Oh God, please heal this person. We're petitioning God. God, please do this. But in more primitive societies, and you're going to find out it's also us, but in more primitive societies, they would give offerings. We brought you this much grain. Would you please help our crops grow? We have sacrificed the virgin at the volcano. Would you please give us fertility, right? There's all these things that we do in order to get God's favor. In Christianity, I've given to the church every week, God, so please heal this person. Or, I've been a really good person this week, like this week, or maybe this day, right? So please do this. Like, we almost start thinking in terms of how God might be indebted to us, so you owe us. You know, out of the 52 Sundays, you know how many times I went to church? 51, because Westlake doesn't have a service on the last Sunday of the year. If they did, I would have been here. And this is how you repay me, God, right? We try to control God. Now, when we try to control God, one of two things happen. Next slide. We either ends up working, he grants it, or it gets denied. It doesn't work out. So what does that look like? We ask God for certain things, and let's just say I want to grow a field with more food, right? And so we petition. It's like, okay, I've given you this much grain. Please help my crops grow. Now, if it grows, you're like, thank you. I will do this again next year around this time of the year. Great, right? But if it doesn't work, this is how the human brain works. At that point, what you do is, God must be offended by how little I gave him. So you start to give more. Now, would you grant this, wish? No, more? Well, we're out of grain. What are we supposed to give? And so eventually you end up in a society where you're like, then I'm going to give up the most precious thing I have in my family, which is my newborn child, or myself. I'm going to mutilate myself, right? Or, I don't know what it is, but we start to give up more and more and more. Now, let's just say that he does grant it. Oh, by the way, if he doesn't grant it, you end up over here again. You end up in fear, like, oh no. And so you try to control the situation again. So there's this loop that happens. But if he does grant it, let's just say you have more soldiers in your village now. Then what happens? You are strong enough to take over another tribe. And so now what you're doing is you're creating danger, scarcity, and chaos in other people. So next slide. So basically it becomes this loop. And it's all predicated on control, right? So religion not only fails to hold anxiety together, but thrives on your fear. That's what religion does. But Kotz, I thought, isn't this what we're doing right now? Isn't that religion, right? Okay, you could control, the type of religion I'm talking about is when we see a problem, we use religion to control the problem, right? We're like, okay, so I'll give you an example of so over time, human technology has gone to a point where we're able to control more and more and more. So for example, we're able to control crops to a certain extent, right? We're able to control fertility to a certain extent. And because the worldview we have of God, okay, this is God in my life, is because I can't control this, I'm going to latch onto you. Now, imagine a world where we get more and more control. You don't really need God that much anymore. And that's the kind of religion that we're seeing around the world right now. It's like, well, if that's who Jesus is, then I don't need Jesus because I could control everything that I need in my life. But there's still one thing we can't control, and that is what happens to us after we die. So for that reason, haven't you heard pastors and preachers say this? Next slide. Where will you end up if you were to die today? This is the last attempt at religion trying to control, right? If you want control over that, then you need Jesus. We can't, no matter how much technology has improved, we can't control what happens to us after we die. So we intuitively believe that control is a solution to anxiety, right? So this is what I'm getting at. Christianity played wrong is when we try to control the situation that's at hand that causes us anxiety. Because that is not what the Bible teaches us to do. Jesus does not teach us to control the situation. Jesus does not tell us that, if you want control over what's going to happen to you after you die, then you need to, put your faith in me. He never says that. Point to a verse where Jesus actually says that. He never says that, right? But what does he say? When it comes to anxiety, things that haven't happened yet, what does he say? He says this: God teaches us in the Bible that love is the solution to anxiety. Love is the solution to anxiety. As a matter of fact, one of Jesus' disciples, he wrote a letter called 1 John. This is what he said. He says, there is no fear in love. This is interesting because you think the opposite of love is hate. According to John, the opposite of love is actually fear. They just don't mix together. And what does that mean, right? He even says, but perfect love drives out fear. What he means by this is, we're not called to change the circumstances. Although we could pray and ask God to change the circumstances, please heal this person, please help the crops grow, please, help me pass this test even though I didn't study for it. You could ask God to do miracles, and he does do miracles, okay? So I'm not saying don't pray for these things. But the primary way that God wants us to deal with our anxiety is not to control that, but to control us, control our hearts. We have control over ourselves. He's like, now let's start with that. Look, if the world worked according to our anxieties, for example, My daughter, it's almost time that she gets braces. So we took her in for a consult, and they're like, oh, she has baby teeth. You have to wait a few more years. So she was like, phew, right? But imagine if we were like, whatever you're afraid of, we will control the circumstances so that you don't have to be afraid anymore. Every doctor's visit, like, you don't have to go to the doctor because you're afraid of it. Oh, you don't have to get braces because you're afraid of it. Oh, you have a toothache? Well, we don't have to deal with it because you're afraid of the dentist. No, right? You have to go through your fears. Now, as parents, there's not much I could do about that. But if you go to a kid, like a kid's dentist, there's always like a chair there for the parents to sit, so that they could be there with them. The love of a parent will not take away the dangers of the world, but the love of a parent will help you walk through the anxieties so that you could become stronger for that. So, fear or anxiety in this case seeks to control outcomes, but love seeks to persevere through your fears. As parents, isn't this what we do? Instead of saying hey, you have that oral presentation coming up, I'm going to call the teacher and tell that teacher that I think it's wrong that they have to make our kids do these oral presentations. No. We say, hey, we're going to be praying for you. We're going to sit with you, and we're going to prepare you as much as possible so when you go and do that oral presentation, you could get through it with the best chance that you have. What we do is the love of God helps us persevere through the challenges that we have ahead of us. As a matter of fact, the first century church in the book of Acts, oh man, I'm going over time. Okay, in the first century church in the book of Acts, if you look through it, look through every single prayer. You'll never find a prayer where it says, God, people are persecuting us, would you make it stop? No. You'll see people praying, give us strength to get through this perseverance, so that we can persevere through this persecution. Because God is going to be with us. But what if God isn't with us? And Paul had to deal with this. Paul, one of the first leaders of the church, he was basically saying, everything that's happened to me makes it look like God is not with me, right? So he says this, what or who shall separate us from the love of Christ? People will think that God has abandoned me because I just had the worst season of my life. I was in a shipwreck. A snake just bit me. Read the book of Acts. A snake bites him, right? There was a time when people wanted me dead, right? People stripped me naked. You would say, oh, God is not with Paul. Look at all the bad things that are happening. He's like, no, I know for a fact that God is with me, even despite all these things that are happening to me, because I believe that the love of God will never part me. And he goes on and gives us a list of things that might separate us from the love of God. This is what he says. Shall trouble or hardship? I don't know. Let's keep going. What else? Persecution? That's not going to separate me from the love of God. What else? Famine? There's been times when I just didn't eat for days. There were nights when I slept with no roof over my head. When I was shivering, I was cold. There was times when I was in jail, right? Or maybe nakedness. You would think that somebody shames me in public, that's a sign that God has left me. It's like, no, God is still with me despite these things. Actually, it's because I'm going through these things that God is close to me right now. Or maybe danger. Or maybe the sword. People are trying to kill me. And then, right after this verse, Paul quotes a line from the book of Psalms. And what's interesting about this verse right here is not the psalm itself, it's the context in which is given. This is what he says. For your sake, we face death all day long. We are considered as sheep to be slaughtered. This is in the context, if you read this psalm, in the context of this person doing everything right. He does everything that God asks him to do, and still he's being persecuted and he's being put to death. And he says, wait, I thought doing the right thing makes it so that bad things don't happen to me. And Paul's like, look, this psalmist from hundreds of years ago did everything right. Bad things happened to him. That's what's happening to me. And the reason I could get through it is because God's love has not left me. So, God may deliver us from our torturous situations. We pray for healing. We pray for all these things. But it's not guaranteed that he's going to be like, yes, because you prayed enough. By the way, if you pray 100 times, and then you pray 100 times more for God to do something, and every time the answer is no, now you're just trying to control God, aren't we? right? But that's a separate sermon, right? But sometimes God may deliver us from our torturous situations. That's not a guarantee. If it was, then the first century church, nobody would have suffered, but they did, right? But instead this is a promise. God will walk with us through our torturous situations. He will walk with us through the fire. Paul puts it this way. This is earlier in the book of Romans chapter 8. What then shall we say in response to these things? If God is for us, who can be against us? If God is for us, who can be against us? God's love takes focus off of the thing that causes our anxiety. So remember, most human beings, we try to control the situation. And hey, if it's within your control, then yes, control it, okay? But what he's saying is, if this is out of your control, like if that person is a threat, let me kill him before he kills, like that's controlling your situation, right? Instead of changing your situation, focusing on their situation, why don't we do this instead? He says, God's love refocuses our attention on the one who gives purpose to our obstacles. I'll close on this point. So here's that little hierarchy thing, okay? What he's saying is this. A lot of people focus on this. Oh, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? When we focus on Jesus, this is what we discover. For the first one, like ego, he says, when I focus my gaze on Jesus, I'm reminded that I have his image in me. And even if I'm not able to do anything, he looks at me and says, you have worth. I will die for you because you have worth. When I was able to do all this stuff, people thought I had worth, but now I can't do it. People think I have less worth. God says, even before you were able to do those things, I believe you had worth. What about separation? He says, I will never leave you. None of the things that happen in your life could ever separate us. Now, autonomy is an interesting one because we really don't have autonomy, right? Like if you go out and drive, you have traffic signs, so you can't do whatever you want. You have other people driving that might hit you, right? So he's like, autonomy is an illusion, okay? But as someone, God would say, as someone who does have control over a lot of things, yes, bad things still happen in this world, but for the things I can't control, I want you to know that I am for you no matter what. Or when it comes to mutilation, he says, if something happens to you, your body fails, I want to tell you this. After this whole thing is over and the age to come, I have something waiting for you. It's called the new creation. No more tears, no more suffering. You're going to have a renewed body. And extinction, fear of death. He says this, I have eternity waiting for you. When you focus on Jesus, you will learn that this is true of the situation you're in. But if you focus on the trouble, you basically say, I want to see what I could do to manipulate this situation over here. Religion is based on control. Control because of your fears. And what that does is it exasperates your anxiety. The love of Christ is the thing that's going to help us get through these obstacles that are coming your way. So, in closing, last verse. Peter, do you guys remember Peter? He's the one that had this crazy anxiety on the night that Jesus was arrested, and he denied Jesus. He's like, I have nothing to do with Jesus because I want to live, right? And if you look through the book of Acts, he has a major role in the church, but then because his life was threatened again, he disappears in the second half of the Bible, of the book of Acts. Later on in his life, he wrote a letter to a church. And this is what he said about his anxiety. He said, you know what I learned? I learned that we should cast all your anxiety on Jesus, on God. Well, why? Because, he says, because. I'm going to tell you why. This is what I've learned. Because he cares for you. And the word care here for in the original language is Greek, is the word that means he has concern, or maybe in some cases it means obsession. He's always looking out for you. How can I make sure Katz is well taken care of? How can I make sure that I'm available for him when he's going through these fires? Cast your anxieties on him because he cares for you. Amen? All right. Let's pray.